group identified as the Coalition of Northern Nigeria People's Democratic Party Youth Movement has taken to the streets of Katsina to demand the resignation of Abiodun as the party's national chairman. According to our sister publication This Day, the protesters marched to the Katsina City Gate on Sunday with placards saying Abiodun must resign and PDP is not a private company, amongst other inscriptions. Well, leader of the coalition, Shehu Adeniyi, says Abiodun to keep to his words by resigning, saying the PDP is not a Northern People's Democratic Party.
Okay, let's have a discussion on these issues, and we have in the studio a Rise analyst, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, and from our off-site studio, a lawyer and human rights activist and a Rise analyst, Barrister Frank Tietie. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us, and welcome to Newsnight. One of the major stories there that touched me particularly is the call by PDP Youth Wing in Katsina demonstrating not only that Abiodun should resign as the party's chairman, but that he should keep to his word and that the party is not a Northern People's Democratic Party. How instructive is that, particularly when you look at strategic communications, Professor Abiodun?
Well, I think it's politicking that is getting to a crescendo. We're going to be seeing more of this. And of course, we do not expect that if we have a stormy petrel in PDP, like Governor Wike, championing the cause, we do not expect that some other interests, whether they are youth or older elements, wouldn't be supportive somehow, you know. But of course, the debate has been on for some time now, whether the PDP chairman should resign or whether he shouldn't. And arguments have been very solid on both sides as well, that yes, if he were to resign, this time is not auspicious enough because they are preparing for election, and there are so many bureaucratic bottlenecks, you know, the constitutional hiccups, you know, on the path to his resignation. And of course, the other side would not also have none of that, you know. The arguments around how they can explore extra constitutional means, resignation now and validation of the resignation at some other times in the future, you know. So these arguments and counter arguments will continue to rage with PDP, as the case could be, you know. And of course that youths in a section of the country are now coming in to support one side might just be the beginning of, you know, of something that we're still going to continue to see. I'm not going to be surprised if I see some other section of youths from the other side also coming out to support Abiodun, which is typical of politics. But we should not forget that the crisis of confidence is not just peculiar to PDP. APC too has its own, you know, with the fact that, you know, the controversies are still raging over the same fate ticket, you know, and of course they are trying to cope with it as the case could be. Now it's gradually thawing and they seem to be moving on. But of course, once in a while, we see this rearing its head again. And Labour Party, yes, it is rising, you know, with rallies here and there, looking more like what could be termed like a movement. And of course, I see the movement, I see the rallies across the states being a counter statement, you know, over allegations around not having structures, you know. If we are having people, if we are having supporters, you know, running rallies on their own without the support or the blessing of the hierarchy, of the party hierarchy, it sends a message across sections of the populace.
Prof. Abiodun will definitely come back.
This is actually something that is a matter of momentum and not necessarily a question of
sorry, but I have to butt in here. Well, we will get to the Labour Party because we have a plethora of issues, and of course, hopefully, we have ample time to get to all of them. But I want to stay with the opposition's People's Democratic Party, and Barrister Tietie, I want to bring you in here. It's about, of course, still the same call for the chairman of the party, Abiodun, to step aside as that chairman. Bukola Saraki, he's been silent. Well, he's one of those people that was accused by the governor of Rivers State in that explosive interview on Friday that he was negotiating for a particular position. I think he was the secretary to the government of the federation, but that is not what this conversation is about. Well, he's optimistic that the party will be able to come together as one united PDP ahead of the 2023 elections, irrespective of all that Nigerians are seeing right now. Do you share in that same optimism that the PDP as it stands right now will be able to get it right?
No, I don't share that optimism as a matter of reality. Bukola Saraki and even Atiku Abubakar himself have been accused of being persons who have divided PDP so much in the past, and they have not done much as required to unite the party. And those who allude to the karmic effects of what they did to former President Goodluck Jonathan in their strong resolve to ensure that the divided PDP, Bukola Saraki was the arrowhead, was in the forefront of the new PDP that eventually, earned him the Senate president after the elections. So he lacks the moral right to be able to call for unity at this time. He needs to work much harder. PDP crisis, it's interesting when it's now becoming universal among regions and ethnic groups in Nigeria. When you see a group of northern youths now calling for the same thing that Wike is calling for, that Ayu should resign. But when you see an organized meeting with placards printed with orchestrated messages, you will know that such a kind of move is sponsored. So it may not be a true reflection of a sizable number of northern youths that are calling for Ayu's resignation. But it resonates clearly that even in northern Nigeria, when issues are often blurred when they are given an ethnic or regional divide, but in this case, it's becoming something else. So Ayu must actually heed the call, and Atiku Abubakar must try to, apply that one last-minute master stroke, since the time for the election is very close. The unity at this time for the PDP is very, very far. Yes, Wike has been spitting out venom. And his body language and the undercurrents of his expressions tell of someone who has irreconcilable differences at this time, and working towards ensuring that he strikes back in form of a revenge of what happened to him at the convention. So the PDP has a crisis, and those who refer to the karmic law being in operation here might just be right. They did it to President Goodluck Jonathan, Atiku himself, Bukola Saraki, and now someone who has a lot of Goodluck Jonathan's sympathy, who has had it and had a lot of favors from Goodluck Jonathan, coming from Goodluck Jonathan's region. He's now bent on dealing on them the same blow they dealt on Jonathan. So it's something that resolved, it's something that's strong, and it's a big problem for the PDP indeed.
A big problem indeed, and Nigerians are hoping, and party members hoping, that they will be able to resolve it. But let's go to the ruling party now, the All Progressives Congress, APC, where the governors, dissatisfied with the membership of the Presidential Campaign Council, are vying that they are going to work against the APC. Prof? I mean, it's one problem or the other, and sometimes people are quick to say it's because of lack of political ideology that the two parties, or the majority of the political parties here, are made up of strange bedfellows.
Well, I don't think so. If we don't have crisis, or semblance of crisis in the political party, then it will not assume the name political party. Political party, do not forget, is a conflation of interests. And these interests, are not permanent, they are shifty. They move, they change over time and space, and that's what we see constantly reflecting. But a matter like rejection of supposed names, from sections of governors, shouldn't be one that is serious, that I think that is so serious that they cannot resolve. So I see that being resolved. That's not as fundamental as maybe choice of who is going to run with who on one ticket or the other. These are minor issues that at some point I think they're going to resolve it. Maybe it could also be a continuous thing. Yes, over 400 people, largely symbolic. You do not expect all these people to be active. And if Pareto, I'm sure it falls largely in line with what Pareto told us ages ago, about the 10 or 20% rule, where you have only a small percentage of the population being active in an organization. And we will see that playing out effectively in the political parties, but in the political parties governing campaign councils, as the case could be. 400, obviously unworthy, so at the end of the day, just a few people will be very active. And if some names are missing, nothing is saying that those names cannot be added in the near future, if to bring about greater level of inclusion and integration. So it's something that can be amended.
And you think the governors are acting, in a way that could undermine the APC during the elections?
No, I don't think it will get to that level, because I want to believe that these governors or these leaders are respectable people, except there's an underlying grouse somewhere. But I don't think, a minor thing as omission of suggested names in a campaign council will be fundamental enough to affect their decision in the presidential election, as the case could be.
Right, but of course this is not synonymous to the ruling party, because as it stands, the main opposition, PDP, they have their own issues as well, with some governors sticking with, of course, the runner-up at that presidential primary, Nyesom Wike, who is also a governor in Rivers State. But Frank Tietie, I want to move away from these two major political parties and talk about what we have seen and what we continue to see. Cast our minds back to prior to the 2019 election. There was this talk about the third force and how, there was going to shake up the entire place, and maybe we might see a change when it comes to the presidency of Nigeria. That didn't happen. But now, as we look forward to the 2023 elections, we see political parties, due to particular individuals, if I must add, really show that they are serious, having the support of the people and all of that. So my question to you is, with all the momentum we're seeing, are you optimistic that in the 2023 election, we might see some change, from the two parties that has dominated politics since the return to democracy in 1999?
Yes, indeed. It is becoming clear that for the first time we might just have a true multi-party democracy. We haven't had it from the Second Republic, even in the First Republic, we've never had it. We've always had a two-party system, irrespective of tens and scores of parties that we've had. When you have a third party that is asserting a lot of influence, as we now have in the personality of Peter Obi, then we are approaching multi-party democracy indeed. And it portends interesting times in 2023. We might have to go beyond the controversy of two-thirds, one-quarter, as it was in 1979, in the 1979 elections, meaning that we will begin to actually calculate for the first time whether we may have a runoff election, that is, we may have to go into a second round of election, which has never happened in the history of this democracy that we've had since the Second Republic. So, yes, indeed, we are having a third force. I met some political pundits having a meeting over a clear and present fear that was on their faces, because they said they have it on record that a certain number of millions of voters that are sympathetic to the Labour Party have constituted a big threat to one of the majors, that is either PDP or APC. The fear in their faces was quite palpable. You see, so to the extent that they needed to put together a strategic think tank for, to address that. In their own minds, they think that the Labour Party has already won with the number of sympathetic registered voters that I don't know how they were able to get that, but with the number of sympathetic registered voters that they think that the Labour Party has, it seems to have won the election. I know you said we should move away from the APC, but the APC is treading on very, very dangerous grounds if it undermines its governors. Right now, the real structure that the APC has is the number of governors that it has who are committed to the party. A campaign council is supposed to be a lot of work. It is come to work, do serious work, sometimes unpaid job. But it's interesting that there is a clamor that people, particularly governors, are saying they were ignored. The reason is that if you are ignoring their influence, their interest at this time, some of them are two-time governors, they may not be coming back. So they will just perceive that what will happen if they ultimately have delivered their states and nothing comes to them. So it's important that the APC continues to court its governors in such a respectful and cordial manner that it should be seen. We have a president who is so aloof, he doesn't want to get involved. He demonstrated that so loudly during the APC convention. He didn't care. He didn't assert his interest in any candidate. Is that the president? And then you want to also make your governors as a party not to be interested? That is very dangerous for a party that is ruling to do. The governors must quickly be, apologized to, and then some kind of modification be done immediately to the campaign council, or else it will spell disaster to the party. So definitely, yes, there is a third force. The Labour Party is very close to that, not because it has structures, but because of this unusual, mysterious personality of Peter Obi that is just gathering storm from nowhere. It appears to be a perfect storm indeed.
Well, let's say come February 2023, we'll know how perfect that storm is, because there are other stormy parties, you may want to say, like the ADP and the NNPP. ADC rather, and even ADP and NNPP. So you cannot, undermine some of these parties. They may cause some damages here and there. Thanks so very much, Arise analyst Frank Tietie and Associate Professor Strategic Communications Abiodun Adeniyi, for coming on Newsnight.